This episode is brought to you by Marantz Model 40N, ISA's Smart Amplifier of the Year. The most musical sound, simplified.
If you're like me, you listen to music at home through a hi-fi system, but you also have a TV that you want to connect to your hi-fi system. So today I want to talk about some of the ways you can connect your TV to your hi-fi system so that the TV sends a digital stereo signal to your hi-fi. Now, why stereo? Well, because I don't do multi-channel, I don't do surround sound, anything like that. I'm not going to talk about that today. Why digital? Well, because most TVs nowadays don't come with an analog output. It's digital only, a bit like my Samsung frame behind me. So yeah, we're going to talk about how to connect the frame to a hi-fi system and the many different ways you can do that and the possible advantages and disadvantages of each. So most modern TVs come with a TOSLINK, sometimes it's called an optical output. This was developed by Toshiba in the early 80s, I think, or mid 80s, mainly for early CD players to take a digital signal out of a CD player into an external DAC, which was pretty rare back then. So we take one end of our TOSLINK cable and plug it into our TV. We take the other end and connect it to our DAC, wherever that DAC might be, whether it's in a standalone box or whether it's inside the amp or whether it's inside the speakers. And then the transmission, the digital audio transmission from TV to hi-fi is lossless, for stereo that is. Again, not getting into the multi-channel stuff today. And then once you've got that connection in place, you might then have to go to your TV's settings menu to tell the TV to send digital audio out of the TOSLINK output. And you might also have to specify PCM to make sure it sends stereo and doesn't send any kind of essentially bitstream multi-channel content. Now, one of the downsides, if it is even a downside, of using a TOSLINK connection is we have to then use our hi-fi's remote control to attenuate the volume of our TV's audio. And that's not the case with our next connection method, and that is HDMI ARC. So HDMI audio return channel. Look on the side of your TV on the back, you need to find the port that says HDMI ARC, and you connect one end of your HDMI cable to your TV and then the other end into your hi-fi system. Now, not many DACs nowadays have a HDMI input, but some streaming loudspeakers do and some streaming amplifiers do. And again, you'll need to use your TV's menu system to tell the TV to send digital audio out of the ARC socket. But the clever part of HDMI ARC comes from something called CEC, which you might also have to enable in your TV's menu settings. Now, CEC stands for Consumer Electronics Control. And what that does is it permits almost like a two-way connection between your hi-fi and your TV. So if we use our hi-fi's remote control, it will change the volume of what's playing, but you'll also see the volume change on the TV display. Equally, and this is the way I think most people do it, is they take their TV's remote control, use that to change the volume, and that then sends a signal into the hi-fi system for it to change the volume on the amplifier or the speakers, and you see that change on the amp's readout or inside your app that controls that amp or your speakers. So it's like a two-way communication for volume control. It also works for power. So one of the great advantages for many people of HDMI ARC in many situations is having one button that powers up the TV, but also the amplifier and or the speakers. Because this is a nerdy hi-fi channel, some of you might want to know, is there a sound difference, a sound quality difference between a TOSLINK connection and an HDMI connection? Now, for me, in my experience with my frame and various bits of audio hardware these last 6 months, the answer is a flat no. Another thing to look out for if you're a high-res audio purist is that many operating systems that run on TVs resample all audio to 48 kilohertz. Now, that doesn't bother me, but that might bother you. It's certainly the case with my frame, but it's not the case with all TVs. So generally, you'll only get 48 kilohertz sample rate digital audio out of your TV. If you're just playing CD quality, it's not so much of a deal breaker. And if you're watching YouTube, like, forget it, it doesn't really matter at all. So if you're a high-res aficionado, again, this kind of conversation really isn't for you. Unless you've got a TV that gives what's known as bit perfect digital audio output. But bit perfect falls well beyond the scope of this video. So TOSLINK and HDMI ARC are the two ways you can connect your TV to your HIFI system with a physical wire. But there are some ways you can do it wirelessly. The first of which is Bluetooth. Some modern TVs, including my frame, have a Bluetooth output. So I can go into the menu settings and tell the TV what Bluetooth receiver to send the audio to. So what will happen is the TV will display the picture as normal, but it won't send the audio out of HDMI or out of TOSLINK. It'll send it out over Bluetooth to the paired device. So you have to pair inside the menu first, just like you'd be pairing a pair of headphones or something like that. In fact, you can even do this with a pair of Bluetooth headphones. One of the downsides is lip sync delay, in that it takes a little bit of extra time to send the Bluetooth out to the receiver, so whether that's a HiFi system or a pair of headphones, and for that to be processed by that HiFi system or headphones. But I've not really had too much of an issue when I've used Bluetooth with this particular TV, but your mileage may vary. And again, for people who are very nerdy about audio quality, obviously Bluetooth isn't stellar audio quality. It's not terrible, it's not trash. For me, it's good enough because I don't care as much about my TV's audio as I do about music playback's audio quality. So Bluetooth is kind of okay for me. But for some people, the hit to quality for, I guess, super lovely soundtracks might be too much. So that brings us to our workaround, which only works on an Apple TV. This next thing only works on Apple TV. And that is, if you're using an Apple TV as your sort of streaming source for video content, so say you're playing YouTube or Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, what you can do is you can tell the Apple TV in its settings to fork off the audio as an AirPlay stream to an AirPlay receiver. And that might be an AirPlay equipped amplifier or an AirPlay equipped pair of loudspeakers, or even an AirPlay equipped dedicated streaming DAC. So I've used this very successfully. So what you have to do is you have to go into the settings, you have to go to audio and video, and then audio settings, and you have to specify what's called a temporary audio output. And then you have to make sure you turn off the default output as well. And that will then obviously display the picture and then route the audio from the Apple TV box itself to your HiFi system. And as far as I can tell, AirPlay seems to manage the lip sync pretty damn well in that configuration. And Apple AirPlay isn't lossy like Bluetooth is. It is lossless for all sample rates up to 48 kilohertz, at least according to Apple. So again, if you're a high-res aficionado, that method of connection probably isn't going to work for you, especially if you're doing something like you want to stream from Apple Music and you want to get the benefit of high-res content. No. Now the new kid on the block in terms of wireless communication between a TV and a HiFi system is something called WISA. And this is sort of collectively managed by a group of audio companies or consumer electronics companies. And what it is, it allows a wireless connection between, in most cases, between a TV and a HiFi system. And it operates up to 24-bit 96 kilohertz. So this actually brings in some of the high-res people into this conversation, right? Now, some new LG TVs have WISA built in, as do some new Hisense TVs. But my Samsung frame from 2022 does not. Now, on the high-end audio end, in terms of receivers, I've got two speakers here in this room right now that are WISA capable receivers. They are the Dynaudio Focus 30 and the Buchardt A700. But there are also loudspeakers made by Savant, System Audio, Harman Kardon and Bang & Olufsen that are also WISA receivers. Now, there are workarounds if your TV does not have WISA built in. So you can buy something called a SoundSend, which I think is made by Platin, but it's branded under the WISA branding. And what that does is you take HDMI out of your TV and connect what would be the HIFI end into the SoundSend, and then the SoundSend converts that HDMI input into the wireless signal that then sends the WISA signal out to your loudspeakers, separate left and right channels. I don't have a SoundSend, but I do have a Platin hub that I pulled out of the Buchardt box, and that works in a similar way. So I come HDMI out of my TV, HDMI into the Platin hub, and then the Platin hub then sends WISA out either to the Dynaudio loudspeakers or to the Buchardt loudspeakers, depending on what I have hooked up at any given time. And if you want more info on this, wisatechnologies.com is where you need to go. I'll put that link in the description box below. So those are 5 ways that you can connect your TV to your hi-fi system to basically carry stereo digital audio from one to the other. I'd like to circle back to what I said at the start of this video about my not being into multi-channel or surround sound so much. There are several reasons why, and I know people are going to get hung up on this, and I don't want to turn this video into that topic, but I will explain them. Basically, more channels means for me greater complexity. It also means more wire being run around the room or routed through the ceiling. It's just, no, I'm not getting into it, because it means also more possible points of failure. And then there are the numerous multi-channel formats out there and their certification, and how certain boxes don't send those formats to other boxes. Like, keeping up with the communication between hardware as it relates to surround sound or multi-channel formats is, for me, just an extra chunk of work that I don't really want to have to take on. But it's also worth reminding you people that I'm really super into music. I mean, it's everywhere around me in terms of physical formats, and my hard drive of tunes is over here. And I'm not so much into movies and TV watching. I enjoy it, which is why I want to route my TV's audio and run it through my hi-fi. But I'm not going to get kind of super fussy about it, especially when it involves multiple channels. Even though there are many on Netflix and Disney Plus and things like that that do have content out there that has Dolby Atmos soundtracks or other kinds of surround. See, I don't even know a lot about this, right? I don't even know so much of what's out there in terms of the movie world. But what I do know in the music world is that multi-channel or surround sound or spatial content is only a tiny slice of everything that's available in stereo, which is really the number one reason I just cannot get excited about multi-channel. When more music becomes available, I mean much more music becomes available in multi-channel or in surround sound, then I'll probably take another look at it. But for now, I'm very much a stereo only kind of person. But please don't get too hung up on my feelings about multi-channel. Just what I want you to do in this video is concentrate on the 5 different ways that you can connect your TV to your hi-fi system, and maybe find one that works for you. And if you thought this video was at all useful, then please give us a like down below. If you like my attitude towards TVs and running them to hi-fi and being stereo only, then please consider subscribing to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.